And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another BPTV here on a Sunday night here in Australia. Hope you're all keeping very well. I'm very happy to be here and talk this business with you because this is something that doesn't necessarily come up very often in discussions within jiu-jitsu. Oftentimes people will just say, oh man, I feel like I hit a plateau. My game is flat. I'm getting bored with jiu-jitsu, all these elements. And then you get other people who are like, oh, I'm so keen, but I'm not improving. And so people often don't know when is the best time to really work on their consistency, or if they need to spice things up with variety, and which is actually going to be better for accelerating your learning. Now, it does really depend where you're at in the jiu-jitsu journey, because certain things are going to be better for a beginner and certain things are going to be better for someone who's been training for a number of years. So I'm going to outline for you guys exactly how I see it and how I've seen it play out with people who are white belts through to people who are brown belts and been in the game 9 or 10 years and just hanging in there to get their black belt. Like they really want to get their black belt, but they're just kind of over jiu-jitsu. They've kind of lost the love. They're a little bit jaded and you don't want to get like that. So I'm going to outline a method which you can apply so that you can keep cycling through different ways of being consistent but adding variety, because you actually need both to learn jiu-jitsu faster. I hope you're keeping well, guys. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, feel free to throw them in the comment section. More than happy to answer those while I'm here. And if you happen to watch this a couple hours later, you missed the boat. Cheers. All right, my friends. Now I'm going to highlight a dilemma. This is a problem that exists universally within jiu-jitsu, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu community, the BJJ business. You go to class and 1 week, say everyone's learning closed guard. And so you're doing closed guard, this class, that class. Then you show up to a different class and everyone's doing back takes. And you're like, oh, I don't really fully remember doing all the closed guard stuff. I need to practice it more. No, we're doing back takes now. So then, okay, I guess we'll do back takes. And you start doing back takes and you kind of get a little bit and you don't. And then you come into a different class and now they're doing judo moves. And you're like, what is going on here? And what is often the case is that coaches try to do too much. They will actually be putting out a lot of information, which might seem like a good business idea, lots of variety, which enables people to really get a taste for lots of things. But this actually does nothing from the learning perspective. And even though this might sound boring, this is what you need to know. When you first start jiu-jitsu, as somebody who's really got no idea what you need to do, you actually need to just stick to 1 or 2 fundamental things and get very well grounded in those. Now, I've talked about this before in terms of having a really solid understanding, like principled understanding of the fundamentals, like what is it that is the basics. And I would reduce that again still to say that you should only be focusing on 1 or 2 aspects of that game and be practicing that continuously for at least a month. Now, pretty much every jiu-jitsu gym I go to, this is not the case. Even if you come and train with me at Jungle Brothers, that will not be the case, because we're trying to cater to the very beginner as well as through to people who are more advanced. And so if it's a smaller club, it's harder to do. But if you're at a bigger club, they may have a really great, beginner's course or a white belt introduction course. And generally, they will be focusing on the key elements and not rushing you ahead in any way. That said, some people learn quicker than others. These people are just sucking up the information quick as possible. And then they're like, give me the new thing. Give me the new thing. I want variety. I'm getting bored. I'm learning quickly. That is not everybody. Actually, I would say the majority of people's experience when they first come to jiu-jitsu is they're just overwhelmed. It's too much information. Even tying your belt. People don't even remember how to tie their belts. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that said, if you can't remember how to tie your belt, you're not sure exactly how to do certain basic coordinated movements like a technical stand-up or a shoulder roll, you've really got to wrap your head around how to coordinate your body before you try and even strangle another human, right? So consistency is the number one thing for beginners. So if you want to learn faster, you must be consistent. Your first 3 months of jiu-jitsu really requires you to be consistently in class. And I would say you need to be there at least 3 times a week. At least. In the beginning phases, you probably want to be there more like 4 or 5 times a week. Now, when you are a frother and you are a beginner, that's actually not that hard to do. It's actually harder to do that later on in the journey when you've got more responsibilities. Maybe you've got kids, whatever it might be. Not all of us start jujitsu when we're young. We might come to it when we're 45, 3 kids, a partner, a full time business. So it is difficult. But if you don't hit that nice patch of consistency at the start, then you are going to struggle to retain the information and your foundation is weak. So you've got to think that we're stacking up these building blocks to build the pyramid of your jiu-jitsu knowledge. If you're missing big chunks at the bottom, it's going to be very hard for you to then build on top of that because you're going to have gaps where it's going to collapse. And then basically that's going to translate to people kicking your butt. And also you stalling in your learning. Because you haven't locked down these fundamental pieces, it will be hard for you to go to the next level and build on that. Hope that analogy hits. So let's think about consistency. We've got to talk about repetition. Consistency and repetition are almost the same thing, but not exactly. Let me explain. Now, if you take one particular technique and you practice it over and over and over for one day, that's good. But we have the recency, we have the latency recency bias. So it's important that you are giving yourself something that you need to remember at the start of the week and you're doing it at the end of the week. You want to give yourself anywhere from 3 to 4 days. So if you practice a technique on Monday, and let's say, for example, you're at your school and no one else is practicing it, you need to find someone that you can practice it with. So before the week is out, you practice it again. Have you ever had that experience where you've gone to a jiu-jitsu seminar, they showed all these cool different techniques, and then after the seminar, you never practiced them and you totally forgot them. So you might have spent 50, 80, $100 to learn this really cool information from top level jiu-jitsu people. But because you did not get that practice, that reiteration, that understanding to really form the connections in your brain, you don't make the connection and it doesn't become part of your game. So here's the deal. If you're taking a new skill, now let's say you've just started jiu-jitsu, you need to practice the hell out of it because not only are you learning the coordination, not only are you learning the whys and wherefores, not only are you learning what makes it, what breaks it, you are absolutely forming absolutely hundreds and thousands of millions of new neural pathways. But once that you've made them, it's very easy then to cross network other parts from that. If you haven't made really solid connections relevant to jiu-jitsu and really gripping a new skill, you're going to struggle to form the others. This is about habit formation. So it doesn't matter what you learn, whether you're learning takedowns, whether you're learning a guard, whether you're learning an armbar, the process of absorbing that skill into your DNA, into your knowledge network, is something that you need to really get in the habit of. This is a routine. So this is what I wanted to say, guys. When you go to class and you learn a skill and you're like, right, I like this one, I'm sticking with this one, this is for me, you need to practice it at least 3 times that week. This is the consistency as well as the repetition. Now, how many repetitions you do before you really get it, I don't know, because like I said before, some people learn quicker than others. But that said, this would be my prescription. You need to be able to practice it at least 100 times in your first week. That's the minimum. Now, if you do this, if you do 100 repetitions in 1 week, now 100 repetitions in 1 day is not as helpful as 30 repetitions on Monday, 30 repetitions on Wednesday, and then 40 repetitions on Friday because it's open mat and you've got the time, right? So getting in that 100 reps, and that's what we talk about, getting in the reps is actually super important, but the quality of the reps, this is the deal. You're not mindlessly doing it. You're actually taking note each time. Oh, what did I do there? I gripped the sleeve a bit more. I lifted my hips up a bit more, and getting feedback from your partner or your coach if you're doing private lessons with them. So there's a couple of elements here. It is the repetitions the quality of the repetitions, and it's spaced repetition. I'm actually going to write that right now. Spaced repetition is actually what I'm referring to. I couldn't remember the term for it. Spaced repetition is absolutely the heart of memory and retention. So if you break it up and you do those 100 reps over the course of the week, spaced out, you're more likely to retain it than just one killer session of 100 repetitions. Now, if you do that for 4 weeks, what you should find at the end of that month, you shouldn't have to think about how to do the technique. You should find that you have actually assimilated it into your system. And even though you haven't necessarily mastered it, you should have it almost as on automatic. So when you go to do the movement, boom, it's right there. Say it's the armbar. Because for me, that was the only submission I had for most of my white belt was just an armbar. I didn't even really know chokes. So I would just hit the arm bars from everywhere because that's all I had. And every training, I was practicing that submission from the top, from the bottom, from guard, anywhere I could. I was trying to hit an arm bar. And it actually really helped me, even though it seems like, a bit myopic, like it's just singular focus. It actually helped me get really good, even though it made jiu-jitsu a little bit boring because I would have liked to do more. I got really good because I only had one thing to focus on. Now, here's the deal. So many instructors are trying to also impress their students because they want their students to think they're good at jiu-jitsu. Of course, you want the students to pay you money, but also you're trying to overcome the impatience of your students because your students are like, oh, but man, I saw this thing on the Instagram. This dude does this thing, and you're like, yeah, that's cool, like for sure, but you're not ready for that. And that's the hardest thing, is being able to have the discernment and the maturity to say, hey, I know you really want to do that, but first of all, you got to get on top of this. And this isn't holding people back at all. And don't get me wrong, I love to learn from YouTube. I love to see something on Instagram. But that said, I can look at something and know whether or not it really fits in with my game. And until you have a good understanding of what your jiu-jitsu game is, you're actually not going to know how the pieces fit together. So the principles are the whys and the techniques are the wherefores. So you have to think that if you don't know why, the how-to doesn't matter. If you don't know why you're doing something, it's kind of pointless. So even though it looks cool or it might be fun, the argument for when you first start jiu-jitsu is all around consistency and repetition. That is the beginner phase of learning jiu-jitsu. And we cycle through this, and I'll explain how that applies. Next, we need to talk about variety. I'm drinking a chamomile and apple spice tea. Ooh, feel like a hipster, but it tastes delicious. Keeping me warm, keeping my vocal cords straight on point. Guys, variety, play, the fun stuff. Now, that's what gets us in, right? When we first start jiu-jitsu, the fun of jiu-jitsu, it's like, yeah, this is cool. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of weird, and only like kind of eccentric people do it. But Joe Rogan said it's awesome, and I just choked that guy, and I feel awesome, and I feel invincible. Yeah, great. Now, if you've done jiu-jitsu for say 3, 4, 5 years, say you're a blue belt, you've been on your blue belt 2 or 3 years, you got a couple stripes on that thing. You want to try and get to purple belt, but it seems so far away. You can't compete because you work on weekends. You can only make it to training 2 days a week. Your coach is asking you to train more. How do I know this? This is a conversation I've had with one of my blue belts who I want to be a purple belt, right? And I want to promote him. He's for sure good enough. But I really just want to see him train a bit more because I know that there's another level to that guy. He doesn't know it yet. He's been in his blue belt so long, it's almost like he's given up hope. And actually what he needs to break out. He needs to do something different. He actually needs to mix up his training so he can get excited again. Even if it's 2 days a week, what I was going to say is he's only training 2 days a week. So even if for one of those 2 days, he goes to a different gym, or he goes and does wrestling, or he tries judo, or maybe he's going to do sambo, whatever it is, he needs to mix it up to really create new connections in his brain. Variety is absolutely at the heart of discovery. And that is where learning is its most enjoyable, not when we're just kind of grinding it out, just learning a slightly different version of something we already know. Now, this is a problem I encountered with Taekwondo because I'd done Taekwondo for 15 years. So when I was 25, I'd kind of topped out in terms of probably my athletic career within Taekwondo. I didn't get to make it to the Olympics or anything, even though that was my dream. But everything was just like a slightly different iteration on the same old kicks. And there wasn't much variety there. And I didn't actually find it that exciting. It's just I'd just been doing it so long, I didn't really know how to do anything else. I was just like, this is what I do. So when I discovered jiu-jitsu, my mind was just blown. Like I couldn't believe how little I understood grappling. And it was incredible. And even for me, when I decided, right, I need to learn judo, and I went across to judo, even though there's a lot of crossover between jiu-jitsu and judo, it was very cool to be a beginner again because I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. To go across and be a white belt again, all the expectation comes off you. This is a relief to a certain extent. So there's no expectations of you on the mat. So you can just play. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. And this is one of the biggest problems. We're all trying not to look bad. Or I should say, we're all trying to look good. We want to be seen to be the expert. We don't want to be a dummy. We don't want to ask the dumb question. Well, I don't have that problem. I'm always up for asking the question, even if it makes people think I'm silly, because I'm sure other people feel the same. And I don't really care. If you think I'm an idiot, you might be right. But the truth is, I want to get my information in. I want to learn. So I will ask the questions. I will make the mistakes. And in an environment where people don't know you, it's actually kind of cool. You can kind of be a complete, jackass and kind of get away with it because there's no ramifications. No one knows who you are. They're just like, oh, that new guy, he's such an idiot. And you're like, oh, good for me. I have the freedom to do what I want. And that brings in that element of play. So that's what we want for you. If you're feeling stuck and stale and you've been training jiu-jitsu for a while, you need variety. This is the prescription. One day a week, you need to do a different style of grappling. So if you've been training a lot of gi, you need to go and do a pure no-gi class. Or you need to go do an MMA class. Have a feel for that. For some of you out there who train no-gi, go do some judo. Find out what that's all about. The grip is very important when you do judo, even though it may not be so obvious when you're doing no-gi. Or just do some pure freestyle wrestling. Find out how hard that is. Because what it'll do is it'll actually open up new neural pathways for you. And this is where you actually get better at jiu-jitsu. You have to understand that consistency and repetition will get you super deep on one focus to be able to really know a singular technique or position, right? But when you go and do something different, it adds breadth. It broadens your horizon and your view on what grappling can be. And when you form these new neural pathways, when you come back to do your repetition work on what you know, your game has grown. And then it can also give you this process of discovery. Variety and discovery go hand in hand. Discovery then takes you down a new path, and then that gives you inspiration, a new type of repetition. And so what can happen is if you're just kind of banging your head against the wall, you're thinking, I'm sick of doing the same old thing. You find something new. It's exciting. It's fun. You are now actually kind of relieved and refreshed. And you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try this. And then you start working on a new project. And then you master that skill and you get the stimulation and dopamine from the new learning. And then you're back on the train. You're staying on the path. And this is the interactivity of consistency versus variety. So if you actually want to learn faster in BJJ, you don't just grind away until you want to quit. You actually need to cycle through your steroids. No, you need to cycle through consistency and variety. So how do we approach this? If you can take your year and think about it in blocks of 3 months. Now, this isn't because, quarterly and the year and financials, nothing like that. 12 weeks is a very good amount of time for you to look at your skill acquisition. So even if we broke the 3 months up into 2 6-week blocks, this gives you an opportunity to work on concurrent projects. So you might work on some version of your top game, whether it's guard passing or takedowns. and then you work on a particular guard or guard retention from the bottom or submissions from the bottom. So you pick one skill from each field and you work on it concurrently over a 6-week period. Then when you get to the end of the 6 weeks, you're like, okay, where am I? Do I want to do something different? Do I want to add variety at the 6-week mark? Or do I want to do a slightly different version of what I'm already working on? So if you were doing closed guard, you might now work on half guard. And then also with your passing or your takedowns, you might have done some judo takedowns, and now you're going to do single legs or double legs. You do more wrestling oriented. So you keep similar themes, but slightly different iterations across the 12 weeks. At the end of the 12 weeks, you completely change what you're doing. This is how we engender the variety. Now, obviously, your coach is in charge of what you do in the class, but what you do at open mat, what you do before class, after class, it's on you. This is like uni. You go to uni, you pay the money. No one cares if you learn. You could be getting drunk at the college bar. No one cares but you and maybe your parents, right? It's your money. It's your future. So you can kind of piss it away, or you can take it into good focus and really harness it. Because I'm telling you guys, you're not going to be in the game for long if you do not keep this kind of replenishment of learning. If you just allow yourself to kind of show up and passively try and learn, your results will be slow. You will kind of plateau sooner, and you're much more likely to quit because you're not going to get the same enjoyment of learning. So let's review that. Consistency and repetition is super key for the beginner. Even though when you first come to something new, you want to kind of try everything, this is not the best way forward. If you want to learn faster, you pick one or two things and you get into them deep. So regardless of what's going on in class, you need to form a routine of skill practice outside of your class. And that's where drilling comes in. Now, I've talked about this before. I'm not going to go super deep on it now. But if you guys would like me to talk a little bit more about how you can approach your drilling, we can do that. But I have touched on that before. Now, the biggest problem with all of this is the BJJ business model. It's just throwing too many techniques, too many different topics at a new learner, which actually doesn't help you learn. Even though you might think, oh, this is really cool, it will actually impede your ability to progress. So that's why it's important that you find a training partner, get someone you can drill with, focus on one or two things, and just work the hell out of them for a period of 6 weeks. Then you can review at the 6-week mark and take it through to 12 weeks. But I'm going to encourage you, when you hit 12 weeks, change it up. Do something completely different and cycle this through over a year. I guarantee you, if you do this 3-month block approach, you'll get to the end of the year, you'll actually know a lot more, even though you've only practiced about 16 different kind of techniques or positions. You will actually have a much more thorough understanding because you've been proactive about it. Then we look at variety, guys. This is the deal. You have to recognize when you've plateaued, or it's not your fault. It's not your coach's fault, but you got to snap out of it. This is so important. If you do not do this, then you are going to basically hold yourself back, and it's kind of useless because you've only got so much time. You've got this small little window. Let's say it's 10 years. And let's say after 10 years, you can no longer do jiu-jitsu for whatever reason. You want to get the most out of that mother. You want to really squeeze the juice out of it. So if you could get your black belt in, say, 6 years, then you've got all this much more top-end learning to do once you hit black belt. I get frustrated with my students, not because I don't relate to them being white belts. I just wish they were black belts already. Because like if they were all black belts, it's like, this is cool. Now we can do all this other cool stuff because you have all this requisite knowledge that I don't have to explain to you. Now, that's a bit unfair because obviously there's a lot of enjoyment in the journey, and, like that's a process that's quite fun. And once you're a purple belt, you're never a blue belt again. And once you're a brown belt, you can never go back. But here's the thing. What a lot of you may not know is once you hit black belt, there is another world again on top of what you'll learn. So it's kind of like when you move out, you leave home, you finished high school, you've now got to get out in the real world. That's what black belt is. And I want you guys to get there as quick as you can, but not with any less quality. How do we do that? we have to factor in variety sooner. We can't wait. So the best way that you can do that is try other styles of grappling. And the last thing I'm going to say, and we've actually, I mentioned this before, and we actually I think I got a thumbs down or a dislike or something, because I said that you've got to train at other gyms. Some people get upset about that. That's ridiculous. If you have a problem with me encouraging people to go and train at other gyms, you're missing the point. This isn't about being disloyal. This is not about quitting your gym. Yeah, stick with your gym, stick with your coach. It's not against that. What I'm saying is to expose yourself to different skills, different styles of learning, different approaches, which is going to actually open your mind up. You need to train at other gyms, even if it's only 1 day a week, even if it's only 1 day a month. You've got to get out of your bubble. You've got to get greater exposure, and you need to learn there is other ways to learn. All right, my friends, thank you so much. I really appreciate you tuning in. Even though this might seem like a bit of an abstract discussion, this is absolutely key. And I know a lot of people get stuck in a rut and they don't know what to do. So if you're just starting out on your journey, develop your routine for really getting in your reps. And if you've been in the game for a while, you have to find a way to inject variety, because if you don't, your game is going to go stale. And that, unfortunately, can really spell the death for a lot of people in their jiu-jitsu journey. Much love, guys. Appreciate all of you. And yeah, lots of good things coming. I'm going to be heading off on my world tour. Literally, we are booking the tickets in the next day or so. So I will be in Germany, Poland, and France for the month of July. I will be in England and Scotland for the best part of August, and then we will be in the USA and Canada through September to the start of October. So if you are interested to have me come to your gym to do a bulletproof seminar, we don't need any equipment. I have a great mobility and injury prevention seminar for you guys. Been working on it for a little while, and I know you get a lot out of it. So if you're interested, feel free to hit me up directly. Email me, jt@bulletproofforbjj.com. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. And between now and when I see you next, stay bulletproof.